As a marshal, Lin Biao helped win China from Mao Zedong. He could not help Mao run it. In this video, I want to talk about a man on the edge, a guy who commanded vast armies and conquered the Chinese mainland, but then was placed into an impossible situation and died trying to get out. Lin Biao began as a marshal of the People's Liberation Army, one of its core early generals. Working alongside Zhu De and Peng Dehuai, he conquered Beijing, crossed the Yangtze River into southern China, and ejected the Kuomintang from the mainland. He was described in a 1970 Western written article as, "Lin Biao is the CCP's most successful army commander, a strong man in his own right. Within his slight frame exists a steely determination. To Lin Biao, life is warfare." Upon the founding of the People's Republic of China, Lin joined politics and ascended to the highest ranks. Highly regarded by Mao Zedong, Lin would be named the vice premier and Mao's designated successor. Lin had not actually wanted this position, but Zhou Enlai cunningly withdrew from the nomination first and left Lin with no choice. The memoirs and recollections of Lin's secretaries and assistants paint a private, intensely introverted man. Lin remained aloof from others and was often described as passive. He was close to his wife, Ye Chun, who ran his office and was his closest confidant. But other than that, Lin stayed far away from everyone else. Lin Biao is known to have suffered from bad health of some sort, and it greatly affected his actions as a leader of the Chinese Communist Party. Nobody knows what precisely that ailment had been, but Li Zhisui, Mao's personal physician, thought it to be some sort of hypochondria and neurasthenia, a weakening of the nerves. He writes, Lin Biao was still so afraid of wind and light that he rarely went outside, often missing meetings. His fear of water was so extreme that even the sound of it would give him instant diarrhea. He would not drink liquids at all. Ye Chun made sure he received liquid by dipping steamed buns in water and feeding them to her husband. Later physicians attempting a retrospective diagnosis believe it's some combination of untreated social anxiety disorder and possibly something else, maybe schizoid. Social anxiety disorder as a mental condition is best described as social phobia, defined as an excessive, irrational fear of social or performance situations due to an expectation that others will scrutinize the person's action. The primary way the disorder manifests itself is the individual experiencing a dramatic fear of being exposed to a particular situation. This leads them to having anxiety symptoms, muscle tension, sweating, blushing, and others. Lin Biao struggled on a daily basis to have positive social interactions with people. His staff meetings, when he had them, were brief. Lin preferred to stay indoors and did not like leaving his bedroom. Mao and Zhou, on the other hand, labored long hours, working deep into the night. They constantly were talking to people and employed large staffs. Mao was famous for his insomnia and not sleeping ordinary hours. Lin also struggled to attend public functions. He refused to drink alcohol. In one famous episode, Lin visited the Soviet Union in October 1950. He refused to sip even once from his drink during a toast given by Stalin himself. Stalin! Stalin is said to have sarcastically told Lin not to worry and that the drink did not have any poison in it. Another thing found in records that's of interest has to do with Lin's persistent sweating. He is said to have sweated profusely whenever someone saluted him, so much so that he asked his secretaries to stop doing it. In another episode, Mao and Lin appeared together in Tiananmen for a public gathering one evening. Lin told Mao that he was sweating and needed to leave. Mao, rather vexed, is reported to have said, "You are human. Are human beings not supposed to perspire?" Again, we will never know what Lin actually had, as the records are not publicly available. We can only make guesses based on what evidence remains to us. And of course, we need to point out that Lin was not your ordinary guy working in an ordinary job. He was the vice chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Mao's closest comrade in arms, his designated number 2. And the China of 1960s were not ordinary times. Lin Biao had been one of the key players in the sparking of the Cultural Revolution, joining Mao's wife and the rest of the Gang of Four to grow Mao's cult of personality to the party's breaking point. The general interpretation of the reasoning behind Lin's actions is that he was trying to protect himself by associating as closely as possible with Mao Zedong, the clear party center. This behavior is reminiscent of those around Stalin and his inner circle. As the Cultural Revolution began to intensify, Lin publicly withdrew and isolated himself. He refused to talk about what was happening and became so passive as to neglect his duties as vice chairman. In a letter to his subordinate Tao Zhu, he would admonish Tao to be passive, passive, and passive again. Behind the scenes, he tried to protect himself by appointing many of his supporters into the Politburo and holding fast to his supporters within the PLA itself. At this time, he began to roll back changes to professionalize the PLA. Lin sought to turn the army into a sloganizing ideological school. Radicalism engulfed the PLA, with activists attacking veteran cadres and even generals. But no matter the intention of Lin's actions, Mao regardless became suspicious. Mao was in general suspicious of everything, but this in particular appeared to trigger him. As Li wrote, "There is somebody who says he wants to support me, elevate me, but what he really has in mind is supporting himself, elevating himself." The somebody was obviously Lin Biao. Lin Biao's attempts to protect himself would disturb the delicate balance of power amongst the Communist Party's many factions. Mao strove to keep himself at the very center of that power and could not brook anyone attempting to take it from him. Slowly, Mao would make moves to rebalance away from Lin and other factions, like those of Jiang Qing and Zhou Enlai. As a result, a rift developed between Mao Zedong and Lin Biao, a tension that would lead to an explosive end. Lin Biao died in a plane accident fleeing China for the Soviet Union. The official Chinese record accuses him of attempting to assassinate Mao Zedong and launch a coup of the Chinese Communist Party. When he failed to succeed, he tried to defect to the Soviet Union, but the Trident jet aircraft crashed in Mongolia on the early morning of September 13, 1971. The record states, after the Lin Biao anti-party clique failed in their plot to launch a counter-revolutionary coup d'etat, Lin Biao, accompanied by Ye Kun, Lin Guo, and several other diehards, commandeered a plane to defect to the Soviet revisionists in betrayal of their party and country. The plane carrying them crashed in the vicinity of Undur Khan in Mongolia. What we know publicly about Project 571, as it was called, makes it seem like an amateur's work. The outline of what was released makes it more look like a political statement than an actual military plan. For example, the asserted coup's strength would be drawn from chiefly the air forces. This is a bit weird, since during the Civil War, Lin Biao was known chiefly for being a ground forces specialist. Why would the Project 571 plan chiefly leave the ground forces as being auxiliary? The most credible theory being floated around is that Lin Biao's son, Lin Guo, and his associates drew up the 571 outline, likely without Lin Biao aware or even noticing. Lin Guo then served as a high-ranking officer in the People's Liberation Air Force. Lin Biao's generals also argued as such during special trials held in 1980. And then there's a few other really confusing things. Why go to the Soviet Union? Lin Biao never really liked the Soviet Union. He criticized them as much, if not more, than the United States, and the Sino-Soviet rift was in full swing then. Why not go to South China, where Lin still had substantial support? But, if you really want to learn more than that, like what really happened and what not, then you're likely SOL. The whole incident is extremely political, and what's left is just rumors and theories and random blog posts like this video. Thereafter, Lin Biao has shouldered the major blame for the excesses of the Cultural Revolution. Traditional party history has painted him as the main driver of the movement, working alongside the Gang of Four to aggrandize Mao Zedong for his own political gain. This is a storyline of great convenience for the party today. For one thing, Lin's support of the Cultural Revolution was backed by other Communist Party officials like Ye Jianying, Chen Boda, and of course, Mao Zedong himself. Historically, Mao is seen as to be the one primarily responsible for the start of the Cultural Revolution. But since Mao is the party's founder and its totem, giving him so much blame would be detrimental. Thus, Lin serves as a convenient scapegoat. All right, everyone. Have a good evening, everyone. Stay safe.